My experience in representing people on death row is ups and downs, beautiful moments of joy as you build a relationship with somebody, and then downs when there are those harsh moments when the execution's on the horizon and then is there. But even that moment can be life affirming because you're bearing witness for somebody, and there's no greater responsibility in recognizing their dignity at that moment. My name's Larry Komp, and I am a attorney that represents individuals on death row at a capital Habeas unit. We represent condemned men in Missouri, but we also have cases throughout the Midwest and Nebraska and Kansas as well. The first is we don't require jury recommendations. So if the jury's deadlocked and they can't decide, and let's say there's 11 people that say, I want life, the judge can take that from them and impose death. We're one of the only states in the country that allows that, and that is a significant flaw in our system here in Missouri. The statute gives all the I guess bargaining power on the burdens and how it's applied at a hearing to the state. So it really puts the trial attorney at a distinct disadvantage. I firmly believe, in my opinion, that we've allowed the execution of the intellectually disabled. In Ernest Johnson's case, the court redefined the requirements of intellectual disability in a manner that was inconsistent with what they had previously said and what is scientifically required. So those are substantial problems where, in my opinion, it's actually led to the execution of somebody who was ineligible to be executed. Then a third factor is race. We can never, ever forget our history in Missouri of lynching. And if you were to overlay a map of Missouri from the lynchings that occurred, it'd be like a belt through the middle of the state, and then it sort of goes down to Cape Girardeau. And if you impose a map of the modern death penalty counties that have imposed death, it's almost identical. It's the same pattern. So I think race plays a particularly vibrant influence on the death penalty in Missouri.
My name is Krisanne Vaillancourt Murphy, and I serve as Executive Director for Catholic Mobilizing Network. I've been here over the last 8 years, and Catholic Mobilizing Network's role is to seek to end the death penalty, advance justice solutions that align with Catholic teaching, and then also to begin healing through restorative practices and approaches. I think that there is a tipping point right now in the nation. About half the states have the death penalty, about half of them don't. And of the ones that even have the death penalty, probably 8 or 9 states are actively executing. So really, the more you look at it, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, where we can really pinpoint where we need to pay attention. Well, we're here in Missouri because Missouri is an executing state, and we believe there's an opportunity to advance ending the death penalty here. I know there's a Catholic governor who's just been elected. There's been some pretty drastic cases that have come to light, even strong claims of innocence. And we believe that the people really don't want this death penalty any longer. I mean, we have work to do, but we believe that ending the death penalty is possible in our time. So we're here educating people of faith about the church teaching and how this is a life issue.
I am the Reverend Kristen Leslie. I live here in St. Louis. I am a retired member of the faculty at Eden Seminary. I am also a United Methodist clergywoman. So the work that I have done long in my ministry is thinking about what it means to accompany people. in hard places, a variety of hard places. A lot of my research and the work that I have done is accompanying actually rape survivors. But most recently, my work has been to accompany folks, men who are on death row. And in particularly, I worked with Chris Collings, who was executed by the state at the beginning of December 2024. The work that I did in accompanying Chris Collings when he was executed by the state of Missouri at the beginning of December, I was approached by the Federal Defender's Office to ask if that's the work that I would be as a spiritual advisor. A spiritual advisor is a religious professional who works with folks who are on death row to be with them in their final days and in fact their final moments. In 2022, the Supreme Court of the United States made it legal for a religious professional to accompany someone in that space and literally be in the execution room when that happens, to pray with them, to touch with them, to be present with them as they are dying. Let me tell you a little bit about Chris Collings. Chris was executed by the state of Missouri on December 3rd, 2024. I worked with Chris in his final months. Chris spent a lot of his life in and out of jail. And in 2007 is when he was incarcerated for the death of a 9-year-old girl. And he was put on death row for that murder. And so Chris lived a lot of his life that way. When he was 49, when he was executed, while he was in prison, in some ways, Chris's life was not unlike lots of folks who are on death row, in that his previous life to that was not a life that anyone would want. Both of his parents were in and out of jail. He was in and out of foster care. He was with a foster family, which was not a great experience for him. That is a huge understatement. So when Chris was finally at Potosi Correctional Institution starting in 2007, in some ways is when he started to have a life that was worth living. Chris used that time to make friends, to do amazing things. He, for 10 years, worked for a dog training program, and it was a thing for Chris that actually brought restoration for him because he began to engage folks in a new way. He began to have friends. He didn't have a lot of friends before that. And in fact, one of his closest friends, Craig, is on death row as well. And Chris was one of those people who liked to connect to people. He was a people pleaser. In fact, the work that I did as a spiritual advisor, I had to be very careful because I knew that if I put something out there, he would want to please me in what I would say. So the work that I did as a spiritual advisor was to help him find meaning in his last days. And not the meaning that I needed him to have, but the meaning that he was seeking. So that was the work that he and I did together in about 2 months' time. So Chris was convicted of a terrible, terrible crime and given the sentence of death. I am not in agreement with the death penalty because it does not bring restoration. It does not bring healing. It does not bring a satisfactory end to anything. You know, for Chris, restoration for him was finding new relationships in the prison, to find a level of forgiveness, to work toward that. Restoration for him was to reunite himself with, to be the best dad he could be. His daughters were very young when he went to prison. And he didn't have a relationship with them until more recently. And so for him, restoration was being a dad, finding a way to be a dad again that he really never had had a chance to be. And that was really important to him, to be the best dad that he could possibly be. You know, we talk about, some would say that the death penalty will somehow bring healing, and we know that it doesn't bring healing at all. Killing people who kill people in order to stop killing makes absolutely no sense. The criminal legal system had already found a way to keep Chris from killing people again. That was to incarcerate him. He was never going to do that again. So killing people, killing him to stop him from doing any harm, makes no sense. It brings no sense of justice and no sense of healing. All it does is it brings revenge. And revenge is not a form of any kind of healing or restoration at all. It doesn't keep people from killing people. All the reasons that we say that we have the death penalty, it doesn't meet any of those ends. And in fact, it's more costly to the state than actually incarcerating them for their lives. So just at a kind of a sensible level, the death penalty doesn't meet any of the goals that it says it wants to do. And in fact, it interrupts any sense of healing for anyone. So we know that the death penalty doesn't bring a sense of restoration for anyone. And in fact, it really does devastate communities. I'm thinking about the folks who work in, like at Potosi Correctional Facility or any of the other correctional facilities who are working with folks who are on death row. Who get to know these folks, who in fact would call them friends because they spend more time with them than they'd sometimes with their own family. But the devastation that it does to them on those relationships. I know that in some cases, in a more recent case in Missouri in the last 2 years, they had all sorts of the staff at the correctional facility at Potosi write a petition to the governor to get the death penalty to change for this person because they all liked this person. They weren't saying we're going to let them out of prison, but what they are saying is they do not deserve to be murdered by the state. They do not deserve to be killed. And it was devastating to them, recognizing this was a good person who did everything that the state was asking them to do. And still, the end product was to execute them. And it was devastating on the whole community there.
I am Sister Helena Monahan. I am a Sister of Charity of the Incarnate Word. We have our mother house and our central offices in San Antonio, Texas, but currently we have ministries throughout Texas and throughout Missouri. We do work primarily, we were founded in 1869 by Bishop Claude Marie Dubuis, who called his friends or notified his friends in France that Texas was undergoing real terrible environmental issues and personal issues after the Civil War and after a cholera epidemic. And he wrote in his letter to his friends in France, "Our Lord Jesus Christ, suffering in the multitude of the poor and infirm of every kind, seeks relief at your hands." What that does is identify the presence of God in each person, suffering and not suffering, and in the people that are coming to assist. So God lives in each of us. That is what the Incarnation means. The Incarnate Word says God became fully human in order to raise the dignity of us as humans. So that's who we are. And we do social work, hospital work, part of the Christus Network hospitals, and education. Incarnate Word Foundation here in St. Louis shares the mission with the congregation. Our sisters meet in what we call a general chapter, which is a gathering of all of us. We meet every 4 or 6 years, and in 1996 we met, and our Social Justice Committee presented a proposal that we would all agree corporately to take a stand against the death penalty. It took significant discussion and sharing to come to a point where every member of our congregation, that time was about 400 in various locations across the United States and throughout the world. We are in Peru and Mexico, and at that time we were in Zambia also, that we would take a corporate stand against the death penalty. and we did. And that was sent to state representatives and senators and representatives, governors, etc. And it sounds like perhaps just a drop in the bucket of a group of 400 women, but if many groups of 400 men and women did that, it would make a social impact.
Ending the death penalty is possible. Catholics have an enormous role to play. We have a strong stance for life. You know, it's not been that many years where the church has been crystal clear about its teaching, about this being a life issue. Certainly the church has been opposed to the death penalty and certainly proceeded with much caution in saying, you know, we should only use this in rare cases. That was kind of the iteration of the church teaching up through, you know, really 2018. In 2018, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and Pope Francis came out with a crystal clarity about ending the death penalty, saying that in no cases is it applicable. Every person should be valued and for their human dignity and their human worth, saying that the death penalty is inadmissible. So really, at this point, the church is saying there are no exceptions. There's clarity now, and I think young people really understand that. Public opinion is at the lowest it's ever been for approving the death penalty. But I want to raise up two historic advances in ending the death penalty that are quite recent. One was at the end of the Biden administration. You know, he came into office a few years ago saying that he wanted to end the death penalty, and then frankly didn't do much until the very end of his presidency, when he commuted 37 of the 40 death sentences of the men on federal death row. Never happened before, 37 of the 40. So that just happened on December 23rd, on the eve of our Jubilee year. And then also at the end of December as well, the outgoing governor, another outgoing political official, Governor Cooper in the state of North Carolina, commuted, I believe, 15 death sentences. So we are seeing these kind of large, bold actions. We know this is a Jubilee year. It's supposed to be a Jubilee year of hope. The Holy Father has specifically named the death penalty as one of the places he really thinks that we can witness for life and we can stand up as a resurrection people. So I bring that hope to Missouri. I bring that conviction that we can stand for life, that there is a better way, that we can keep people accountable no matter the harm, and that there's a better way to seek healing for all parties involved.
So some of you are, some folks are curious what difference that they might make. Here are a couple things that you can do. Pray. Talk to your faith communities about praying and getting involved. Pick up the telephone, call the governor's office and tell them your name, and tell them that you do not believe in the death penalty, that you don't think it's the right thing to do. Show up on street protests if you're someone who does that.
We know we have work to do. We know the Catholic community is a strong stance on life, and we can work on educating about the teaching. We can advocate. We can allow people to handles, you know, when there is an execution, either in the state of Missouri or around the nation. People can write letters to governors or boards of pardon and parole. You can do education in parish settings or in schools, high schools, colleges, and just spread the word. We also know that the system is, it perpetuates more harm, it begets more violence, and we believe there's a better way.
As Incarnate Word Foundation and as a congregation of Incarnate Word sisters, we are committed to human dignity, to the improvement, the raising up of every human being to realize the dignity with which he or she was born. And I think looking at our penal system, our way of punishing wrongdoers is very, very necessary. We need to re-examine it. We need to be unafraid to speak that before those who have the power to make change, and just keep repeating it and repeating it until it is heard. I think there's a gospel story about knocking on the door until the person inside just gets so tired of hearing it that they open the door. And I would put that analogy toward this situation. It needs to be changed.